Saturn is retrograde, moved now into the 21st degree of Aquarius. And this image is rather a challenging one. A woman disappointed and disillusioned, facing emotional pain with stoicism. Sometimes we face the future with the expectation that nothing much of value is coming our way. This occurs when we have had our hopes dashed and cannot reaffirm optimism. It is a great emotional challenge to resist despair and courageously and stubbornly choose to be hopeful. In fact, perhaps the greatest gift of faith is the refusal to allow pessimism to take hold. Faith is not a gift or an opinion, but a decision. It indicates exceptional maturity. So we can see that Saturn is strongly present within this meaning itself. And the meaning is just the Sabian degree. So we have an emphatic message here. Saturn is going to emphasize the need we have to face emotional pain with stoicism. Just grit your teeth and bear it and carry on anyway. And the lesson here is very profound indeed. It suggests that there is disillusion, there is disappointment, and the disillusionment is caused because we are living in an illusion. That's what disillusion is all about. Disillusionment is just stopping ourselves from having this silly idea, the illusion that we're living in, just not having it anymore. So disillusionment is a very positive thing if you're a very serious spiritual seeker. Disappointment isn't. You need to avoid that. And the way to avoid disappointment is by not having silly illusions. We all live in the illusion. We all make up our own glamour of how life is for us. And it's fantasy. It's not that way at all. But we hold on to the illusion for a while. So we're talking about real fancy here. We're talking about outright silliness. And this is so much more commonplace than you would hope. Most people do silly things. Some people do nothing but silly things repetitively for a long, long time. And they're the ones that seem to be surprised or in grief because life doesn't turn out very well for them. And if you believe that life should be a bed of roses, just enjoyable pleasure all of the time, then you're not really looking around and seeing what the facts of the matter are. The facts are that this is quite a struggle for most people. It doesn't have to be, and you can actually pull yourself out of that mindset of struggle and pain and disappointment. You can do that. And this is the beginning of that. It's the beginning of stoicism, because generally speaking, we're brought into the world as babies, absolutely fine, and then parenting happens and we get messed up. And then we go to school and we get messed up further. And then we get a job and we're already very messed up and we get further messed up. That's the nature of one part of the world, and it happens to be in dominant situation at the moment. That's the way things are for most people, most assuredly in most of the countries in the world. It doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't. However, you have to accept that you're coming from a place of being taught by people who do think it's that way and they're certain. I asked my dad once, why he comes home from work with a grumpy mood. I said, why don't you enjoy your job? Why don't you find a job that you enjoy? And he looked at me as if I was some young idiot because I wasn't an adult. Work is not supposed to be enjoyed. Everyone hates their work. I'm very lucky to be the kind of person that would be rebellious in that situation, and I didn't go that direction with him. But that's how it goes. Your parents pass down that message that you're supposed to have a hard time, whether it's at work, or whether it's in relationship, or whatever, and we get programmed to expect bad things. Now, there's another silly teaching that's going on, which is the opposite. It's romance, basically. Now, romance was kind of invented. It sells well, where you tell people that you go through a minor problem, you deal with it, and everybody lives happily ever after. That's what people want to believe, and so they go and read these books and go to the movies and so on, and it all ends up well, and everybody lives happily ever after, and so on. It's another version of nonsense. It can be that way, but usually it's not. It's just not that life that we're living in. This is the earth plane. This is not the plane of fancy. This is the plane of cold, hard truth. You have to overcome that limitation in order to enjoy abundance, and you can. This is also the plane of abundance, but only if you get the formula right. So what is the formula? Well, the best way to avoid being disillusioned is to be realistic in the first place. It's very unlikely that you're going to fall in love with somebody at first sight who is a perfect match for you. And that's what Cupid would have you believe. And that's the operation of hormones that destroys the common sense mechanism that's going on within you. I've even had people explain to me that they fall in love on the internet without meeting each other physically. It's like, how can you possibly believe that? How is that believable? There's so much knowledge passed in physical proximity. I'm sure there's a lot of information given to us on the unconscious level through smell, for example, and body posture and all manner of things that are really important. So any development of emotion which is not backed up by reason is going to be a disillusionment to you, because it's an illusion. It's just silliness. It's neediness projected onto an expectation of what can never happen. So the first way to avoid disillusionment is not to be silly in the first place. But that's not what this particular degree is about. This particular degree is about you are going to get disillusioned, you are going to get disappointed, then what? And here's where Saturn comes in. Saturn is actually the answer to this. Saturn's saying, well, look, if you're serious about growth, spiritual development, and I'm assuming that we all are, if we're studying Sabian Symbols, if we're studying astrology, then some part of us wants to become more, evolve, and develop into people who have got a deeper self-awareness, a deeper awareness of spirituality, a deeper awareness of the need for change. So let's assume that we are on a spiritual path. Then what we want more than anything else, however counterintuitive this might seem to be, is a good dose of Saturn. Because Saturn is just saying, no, this is the wrong direction. That's all you want. When you're living in a trial and error kind of life, what you want most of all is a nice little sign, actually a nice big red sign, saying, don't come this way, it's the wrong way. And that's the most wonderful thing of all. That's how we drive our cars and so on. You're allowed to go in this direction, and then there's a notice saying, no, you can't go down there, that's the wrong way. And Saturn is doing that to us. It's saying, don't go this way, it's the wrong way for you. Perfect. Deal with that. I mean, okay, so make a course direction. If somebody actually is entering your life and they give you a Saturn-like experience, find out what it is that is not working. Something's wrong. Something is not going to work, and Saturn's job is to explain to you what that is. And if it's to do with your emotions, if it's to do with how you're managing your emotions, then that's going to be an emotional challenge for you. In other words, you're going to consider that to be a painful experience. And that's probably mostly what we're talking about here. It seems to be in the image, doesn't it? Now let's focus on the two main factors that we're going through when Saturn is retrograding through this degree, the 21st degree of Aquarius. It was there a few months ago in March 2022 and went through that degree rather quickly. So what we're going to do now is, because Saturn is retrograde, just go over that again. So an issue which came up for you in potentially painful ways back in March may well revisit your life. And now you're wiser because you've had time to reflect, you've had time to consider, you've moved into other experiences and so on. Now you're wiser, so you can actually look at that once more. And what that is an opportunity for you to develop maturity and faith. They're very closely linked, really. I would say that faith is like the cherry on the cake of maturity. It takes a lot of maturity to affirm faith. And faith isn't an arising, it's not a gift, it's not a reward, it's a decision. You just choose optimism. You choose to expect good things to happen. And you choose that on the level of knowledge, so you know it will be all right. For a while, you have to fake it till you make it. For a while, that's called affirmation. The process of affirmation is when you say something is true, and you think, well, it's not really, but I'm going to say it's true. And that doesn't make a lot of sense unless you also get into a higher state of consciousness, wherein it is true. That's what an affirmation does. It moves you into a place where you can reconcile what you have felt to be the case with what you'd like to be the case. And you affirm what you like, and then you reconcile it. And the way to reconcile it is to move to that higher level of maturity. And that's where faith is. Faith is evidence of an extraordinarily high degree of maturity. Because you take responsibility, and the responsibility is what makes your optimism comes to pass. You work it all out for yourself. In order for us to develop those qualities of faith and maturity, we must have challenges. And the extent to which the challenges are really a struggle for us is the extent to which we grow in maturity, and therefore in faith. So if you want your path, your spiritual awakening, your evolutionary path, to bring you to a level of the perfection of faith, you're going to want to deal with these challenges. There is no other way. So you're going to want to attract the kind of disappointment and disillusion that's indicated by Aquarius 21. And when Saturn's going through that degree, this is a very good opportunity for you to experience the truth of the fact that actually in your life there are disappointments. You know, you're disillusioned with how it all is. You might not like the politics, or that there's war, or that there's hunger in the world, or on a personal level you have to go to do a job you don't like. Whatever it is you moan about, just look at that. Look at the fact that you're moaning about it instead of dealing with it. All of these things can be dealt with by a mature person of faith. None of these things can be dealt with by somebody who lacks maturity and faith. It's a litmus test. Here we have it. You're being examined now. We're all being examined. How strong is your faith? How to strengthen your faith? What to do to cope with life? Because it's actually beyond our ability to manipulate and control. We can't deal with all of the horrible things that are going on, however much we feel we'd like to. And the answer to that conundrum is that it's not our job to deal with it. We don't actually want it to end. All the nasty stuff in life, we want it to exist, strangely. If we're very, very strong in our faith, we know it can't touch us. And it's necessary for those of us who are awakening to experience our relationship with the impossible tyranny of life. Because if it's not a politician or a mafia boss, it will be nature or something else, or ill health. It will be something else, which is the tyranny that we have to deal with. Because if we haven't cleared from our own system that we are martyrs or victims to tyranny, then we will attract tyranny. Whatever form you want yours to be in, you'll still attract tyranny. And that's why people are moaning, because they haven't dealt with their propensity to attract tyranny. And you can't deal with it unless you suffer a little bit. You don't have to suffer a lot, just suffer a little bit, and then notice that you're suffering and stop suffering and deal with it. I know how complacent that sounds. I know that doesn't sound very compassionate, and I apologise for that. However, the slap in the face that you need to wake up is given lovingly. Sort your life out. It's all yours, all of it. And you might say, well, it's not my fault. But on one level, actually it is. That doesn't mean you're to blame, but you're at fault. You're not doing it the right way. And what's missing is the operation of faith. Faith is not just a concept or an attitude of being okay. It's a power. Faith is a radiant force of light. And all of us on earth are a bit short on it. Nobody's really perfect in their faith. We might believe that Christ was because he could walk on water, and we were perfect in our faith, and we could do things like that, no doubt. So we're none of us perfect in that. So all of us have this to deal with on one level or another. And the secret to life, happiness in life, is instead of blaming other people, whether that's Putin or a thunderstorm or whatever, understand that you've attracted that. You're the only one that can fix it. And you can fix it, but only if you understand that it's your fault. If you don't understand that, you can't fix it. As soon as you understand that everything is happening to you, all of it, on whatever level you care to imagine it, all of it is yours to deal with. When you understand that, and you have strength of faith at the level we're discussing here, then the power of your radiant light of faith deals with things in one way or another. You just finesse situations. When everyone is suffering a collective emergency, you find yourself not to be there. There was one person who was in both Hiroshima and Nagasaki on difficult days in 1946. And he survived. Extraordinary. Maybe a man of strong faith.